Dear friends, the Israelites' call for a king was nothing short of a rebellion towards God, the overall caretaker of Israel. They knew very well that their shouts were not towards Samuel or his incompetent sons. Today we shall look at God's response to this particular call. What a joy it is to welcome you again, brothers and sisters, as we gather to study the Bible, knowing assuredly that we will be blessed by God as we diligently seek to know and obey Him. Our study will continue on the book of 1 Samuel, and I would like to briefly recall for us our previous lessons so as to understand today's better. We have seen that the ark of the Lord had been captured by the Philistines who defeated Israel in a recent battle. But with the ark in their possession, they soon realized that destruction swept through their towns and cities wherever it was taken. First, their own god, Dagon, was toppled and broken. Next, their man developed strange illness, and many fell prey to it. This fear drove the Philistines to return the ark to Israel, along with a strange offering. In Beth-Shemesh, within Israel, God slaughtered many because they trespassed His direction by looking into the ark. The ark then found its place at Kirjath Jearim, and 20 years passed by until the Mizpah revival swept through Israel through Samuel. Very soon, God gave Israel a victory against the Philistines at Ebenezer, the monument Samuel built in recognition of God's ever-present help. With that, dear friends, join me right away for another lesson on the book of Samuel.
Verse 1 of chapter 8. When Samuel grew old, he appointed his sons as judges for Israel. Samuel made his own sons judges to succeed him, although they were unworthy and incompetent for the job. This act was a mistake. Samuel was a great judge, a wonderful prophet, and a great man of God, but he was a failure when it came to fatherhood, just as Eli had been. Verses 2 and 3 of chapter 8. The name of his firstborn was Joel, and the name of his second was Abijah, and they served at Beersheba. But his sons did not walk in his ways. They turned aside after dishonest gain, and accepted bribes and perverted justice. These were Samuel's sons. They were totally dishonest. Strange, isn't it? Well, Samuel was a great man, God's man, and look what his sons did. Verses 4 and 5. So all the elders of Israel gathered together and came to Samuel at Ramah. They said to him, "You are old, and your sons do not walk in your ways. Now appoint a king to lead us, such as all the other nations have." The people of Israel ask for a king. They are influenced, of course, by the surrounding nations. They give as their reason Samuel's advanced age and the waywardness of his sons. Verses 6 and 7. But when they said, "Give us a king to lead us," this displeased Samuel. So he prayed to the Lord. And the Lord told him, "Listen to all that the people are saying to you. It is not you they have rejected, but they have rejected me as their king." The fact that Samuel had made his sons judges gives these people an excuse to ask for a king. Undoubtedly, this was a heartbreak to Samuel. I like the way he responds. He prayed to the Lord. If it was you and I in this situation, we would probably be defensive. We would give excuses. We would have alibis, but look what Samuel does. He simply prays to the Lord, and God comforts him with the assurance that Israel's rejection is not of him but of God himself. Samuel's sons are the excuse, but rejection of God's sovereignty is the real reason. Then Samuel warns Israel what it will be like to have a king. He tells them that a king will reign over them, take their sons for soldiers, their daughters for cooks and maidservants, and part of their fields, vineyards, oliveyards, and animals for himself. He warns them that eventually they will cry out in their distress, and that in that day the Lord will not hear them. Hosea 13:11 says, "So in my anger I gave you a king, and in my wrath I took him away." Let's get back to 1 Samuel chapter 8 verses 19 to 22. But the people refused to listen to Samuel. No, they said, "We want a king over us. Then we will be like all the other nations, with a king to lead us and to go out before us and fight our battles." When Samuel heard all that the people said, he repeated it before the Lord. The Lord answered, "Listen to them and give them a king." Then Samuel said to the men of Israel, "Everyone go back to his own town." Observe once again what Samuel does. He repeats the matter before the Lord. He doesn't give them a sermon. Even though he warns them about it, he continues to have an attitude of prayer throughout this whole process. The children of Israel are going to have their way. God is going to give them a king. What was true of Israel in the days of Moses is still true. And he gave them their request, but sent leanness into their soul. Psalm 106 verses 15. God will grant Israel's desire for a king, but it will not be to their advantage. God's guidance of the nation will be indirectly through the prophet. As we shall see, God will not speak directly to the king, but still through the prophet who will convey God's word to the king. The king will accept it or reject it as he chooses. In chapter 9, we begin with the second major section of the book of 1 Samuel. The first section dealt with Samuel. Now the emphasis shifts to Saul. Saul is one of those strange individuals whom we encounter in the Word of God. Like Balaam, it is difficult to interpret him. Both in the Old and New Testaments, there are several strange characters who move across the pages of Scripture in semi-darkness. Saul is not a king when we first meet him. There was a Benjamite, a man of standing, whose name was Kish, son of Abiel, the son of Zerah, the son of Bechorath, the son of Aphiah of Benjamin. This is verse 1 of 1 Samuel chapter 9. Kish was Saul's father, and he belonged to the tribe of Benjamin. Recalling the history of the 12 sons of Jacob in Genesis, the tribe originated with the youngest son, Benjamin, a favorite of his father. His mother had died at his birth, and as she was passing away, she named him Benoni, meaning son of my sorrow. But when Jacob looked at the little fellow, he said, "No, he's going to be the son of my right hand." And he named him Benjamin. The boy was the favorite son and was protected by his brothers. Then in the book of Judges, we read that the tribe was punished severely because of an episode of gross sin that took place in the tribe. It is from this tribe, Benjamin, that the first king comes. Verse 2. He had a son named Saul, an impressive young man without equal among the Israelites, a head taller than any of the others. Saul was handsome, and he definitely won the people over to choose him. It is this emphasis on outward appearance that places us in such dangerous positions today, because we tend to choose people by the way they talk or by the way they look. The children of Israel wanted a king, and they liked Saul. He was handsome, he was tall, he was fine-looking. He sure looked like a king. Verse 3. Now the donkeys belonging to Saul's father Kish were lost, and Kish said to his son Saul, "Take one of the servants with you and go and look for the donkeys." Saul and his servant had looked all around for his father's animals and could not find them. Finally, Saul said, "Let's go home because we are going to get lost too, and they will have to send out a search party for us." Verses 6 to 8. But the servant replied, "Look, in this town there is a man of God. He is highly respected, and everything he says comes true. Let's go there now. Perhaps he will tell us what way to take." Verse 7. Saul said to his servant, "If we go, what can we give the man? The food in our sacks is gone. We have no gift to take to the man of God. What do we have?" The servant answered him again. "Look," he said, "I have a quarter of a shekel of silver. I will give it to the man of God so that he will tell us what way to take." Here is a little explanation inserted by the Spirit of God, which is helpful. Verse 9. Formerly in Israel, if a man went to inquire of God, he would say, "Come, let us go to the seer," because the prophet of today used to be called a seer. There is a change of names. Men who dealt in necromancy and spiritism were called seers. God wanted a different name for his man, so he called him a prophet. This actually makes Samuel the first of the order of prophets. Although Moses is called a prophet, Samuel is the first of the order of prophets. Samuel, of course, is the man Saul and his servants are talking about. Verses 14 to 16. They went up to the town, and as they were entering it, there was Samuel coming toward them on his way up to the high place. Now the day before Saul came, the Lord had revealed this to Samuel. "About this time tomorrow I will send you a man from the land of Benjamin. Anoint him leader over my people Israel. He will deliver my people from the hand of the Philistines. I have looked upon my people, for their cry has reached me." You know, many times God answers our requests, even though it may not be the best thing for us. When we keep crying out to the Lord for whatever it may be, He finally gives what we want. And that's what happens. He grants Israel's request. When the children of Israel were in the wilderness, remember, they cried for meat. God gave them meat, but He sent leanness to their souls. That is why prayer should be made in the name of Christ, which means that it must be according to His will and for His glory. All requests should hinge on that very important matter. On the other hand, we can see how God is preparing Saul. Now, Saul, though he may be men's choice, God is giving him an opportunity. Let's read verse 17. When Samuel caught sight of Saul, the Lord said to him, "This is the man I spoke to you about. He will govern my people." God granted their request and gave them a king. Saul was a man that impressed even Samuel. We will find out that Samuel regarded him highly and regretted the fact that he did not make good little later on. 1 Samuel chapter 9 verses 18 to 20. Saul approached Samuel in the gateway and asked, "Would you please tell me where the seer's house is?" "I am the seer," Samuel replied. "Go up ahead of me to the high place, for today you are to eat with me, and in the morning I will let you go, and will tell you all that is in your heart. As for the donkeys you lost 3 days ago, do not worry about them. They have been found. And to whom is all the desire of Israel turned, if not to you and all your father's family?" Verse 21. Saul answered, "But am I not a Benjamite from the smallest tribe of Israel? And is not my clan the least of all the clans of the tribe of Benjamin? Why do you say such a thing to me?" Saul sounds like a great deal like Gideon. He sounds very humble. Gideon said in Judges chapter 6 verse 15, "But Lord," Gideon asked, "how can I save Israel? My clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my family. Gideon was saying, "You can't get any smaller than I am." Gideon was telling the truth. He was frightened to death. Israel was at war and badly outnumbered. But here Saul had no reason to be afraid. We can see that Saul was quite a different person. He didn't feel capable at all of leading the people. Verse 22, Then Samuel brought Saul and his servant into the hall and seated them at the head of those who were invited, about 30 in number. Apparently, Samuel had called a group of leaders together. Samuel said to the cook, this is verse 23, "Bring the piece of meat I gave you, the one I told you to lay aside." So the cook took up the leg with what was on it and set it in front of Saul. Samuel said, "Here is what has been kept for you. Eat, because it was set aside for you for this occasion, from the time I said, I have invited guests." And Saul dined with Samuel that day. After they came down from the high place to the town, Samuel talked with Saul on the roof of his house. They rose about daybreak, and Samuel called to Saul on the roof, "Get ready, and I will send you on your way." When Saul got ready, he and Samuel went outside together. As they were going down to the edge of the town, Samuel said to Saul, "Tell the servants to go on ahead of us." And the servants did so. "But you stay here a while, so that I may give you a message from God." We have here the formality they went through. Saul ate with Samuel that day, and then they had a conference. Verse 1 of 1 Samuel chapter 10. Then Samuel took a flask of oil and poured it on Saul's head and kissed him, saying, "Has not the Lord anointed you leader over his inheritance?" Samuel anoints Saul as king and then kisses him, which was probably an act of demonstrating his personal affection for Saul, but also his allegiance. Remember, Samuel up to this point was leader. Now he is actually facilitating the next leader in charge. Samuel indeed is a gracious man, a man of prayer, a man who knew that God was in control, and who also allowed Saul to take charge, and he demonstrates his love and concern for Saul. Verse 2, "When you leave me today, you will meet 2 men near Rachel's tomb at Zelzah on the border of Benjamin. They will say to you, 'The donkeys you set out to look for have been found, and now your father has stopped thinking about them and is worried about you. He is asking, what shall I do about my son?' As far as Kish is concerned, his son Saul is lost. But Saul is engaged in serious business. Samuel has anointed him king near the tomb of Rachel, which is in the territory of Benjamin near Bethlehem. Verse 5, "After that you will go to Gibeah of God, where there is a Philistine outpost. As you approach the town, you will meet a procession of prophets coming down from the high place with lyres, tambourines, flutes, and harps being played before them, and they will be prophesying." This is what Saul is to encounter on his way back home. Verse 6, "The Spirit of the Lord will come upon you in power, and you will prophesy with them, and you will be changed into a different person." And let's see what verse 9 says. "As Saul turned to leave Samuel, God changed Saul's heart, and all these signs were fulfilled that day." Saul's life turned around in a matter of few hours. Yesterday he was one looking out for donkeys, and today he is a changed man with a different purpose. He is to lay the course for the people of Israel, who could just be as stubborn and rebellious as the mules. All the same, here we see Saul starting off on a good note. He is a changed man with a changed heart. God has this awesome habit of taking the foolish, the simple to confound the wise. Think of David. He was a shepherd boy. God prepared him to lead as king. Then think of the fishermen. Jesus Christ turned their life around to become fishers of men who actually turned the world right side up. 1 Corinthians 1 verses 27 to 31. But God chose the foolish things of the world to shame the wise. God chose the weak things of the world to shame the strong. He chose the lowly things of this world and that are not to nullify the things that are. Dear friend, surrender your life to Him, and He can turn your life around. Don't shirk away from responsibilities because you always tend to regard your weaknesses and failures above and beyond the power and wisdom of God. I challenge you, dear friend, surrender your life. Give your all to Him. And you will be amazed at the way God will spruce your life up with abilities and gifts to help you fulfill His calling. You will be a changed man with a changed heart.
Dear brothers and sisters, two things stand out in our study today, and both continue to afflict our societies today. First, Samuel was an exceptional man of God, but he was unable to raise good children. And the next thing that followed is even more distressing, passing on the reins of leadership to his godless and immoral children. This was exactly the case with Eli and his two sons. While we continue to have many parents likewise, the Bible teaches us that God would not tolerate such evil, nor is it healthy for the people we claim to serve. Secondly, it is so easy to imitate people around us and move ahead with the current. We are prone to approving the outward without seeing the inside. And in our quest to be acceptable or equal with others, we often chart routes that run contrary to God's will. In living so, dear friends, while God may allow us to have our stubbornly defended free will, the end result is a far departure from God, which often is disastrous. The best way forward, therefore, is to allow God, our Creator, to have His way on our lives. He is Lord, and we thrive best under Him. God bless you.